Okay, so here's what the windows look like in continuing this series. So I made a video about the baseboards, about the door trim, and now I want to talk to you about how I did the window trim to match the rest of the style, including this sort of pretty deep windowsill so that I could have plants on here. So yeah, let's get to work on the Craftsman window trim. Okay, so let's talk windows. The windows are the one thing in this whole build that what I tell you may or may not apply to your situation. So I think that most door frames and baseboards, you're just going to be attaching them and it's going to be whatever it's going to be. But the window, your jambs may be a different size, your sill might be a different size. But hopefully this can still give you a sense. So consider watching this video and maybe a few others just to get a feel for how your windows might differ from mine. But here are the basic pieces that you're going to need to do a full sort of window trim, just like we've been doing for everything else. So you'll need the apron, which is going to be on the very bottom, just kind of like the door trim. So that only needs to be finished on two sides, because the one is going to be against the wall and the top will be against the sill. For the sill, you'll need a piece that's stained on three sides, right? So one will be facing the windows, but the top and bottom and front of the sill will be visible. For the trim that goes up the sides, you'll need it finished on three sides, right? So the back is against the wall, but the rest of those sides are visible along the top, depending on what I'm doing. Sometimes I just make up a bunch of these ones that are trimmed on three sides and just have those sitting in piles and I put those on the top. But if you're able to make some explicitly for the top, they only have to be finished on the front. And then the top of the trim is going to be the same as the door. So you'll have this piece that is 1/2 inch thick and 1¼ inch deep that's finished on three sides. That'll go along the top. I'll show you how that works. And this sort of 2x2 that's actually this 2x2 finished on three sides that will run along the top, so that the top of the window ends up being the same as the top of our doors. And you also will need some of this 1/2 inch bead that you'll have to make on your table saw that's finished on two sides to go, again, just to make the top look the same on the top of the windows as it does on the side of the doors. You may also need insulation. So on mine, the 100-year-old insulation all fell out, so I'm going to replace that insulation while I'm in here, and I'm probably not going to show you that part of the video, but think about that too when you're doing this project. Okay, so it's not that easy to film with a window in a background, but hopefully this works okay. Yeah, we've talked a bit about how the window is probably the least straightforward of any of the pieces of trim. So the baseboard, the door trim, crown molding, you can basically just slap it down. But here you have to do a lot of kind of pre-planning, mostly just to get the sill right. So I'm going to just try to talk about that a little bit, or at least what I'm thinking here. If we measure the inside here, I get 61.5. You have a bit of forgiveness there because the jambs are going to cover up any cuts that are a little bit too short. So 61.5. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the jambs here, and I want a 1/4 inch reveal, right? So that means that the trim off the side is going to come out, right? Because this trim that goes up the side is 5.5 in real width, so that means I have to add a 5¼ to both sides, right? So that would be the 61.5 plus 5¼ twice. That gets us to 72 inches. And then you got to think about how much of the sill do you want to actually stick past, because I think they're called horns. Normally you have these horns that go out a little bit past the trim. And I'm thinking that maybe I want something like 2 inches, a little bit chunkier. So then my 72 goes to 74. And then what you have to do is you have to go and you have to cut the horns. And then for this window, I actually have this middle piece, so I actually have to cut it too. And I actually have the old sill right here, which hopefully you can see. So here's basically the cuts that you have to make, right? So you have to make these cuts at the bottom for the horns. And I have to make this cut in the middle, and you might as well. And you can see that it's pretty forgiving. The old cuts were probably done by hand. This is a very old house, and you can see it's not a very good cut. So yeah, that's what you have to do. So, and then, if you kept your old sill, which I would recommend, you can sort of check your calculations, right? So if I measure the old sill, which remember all my trim is a little bit different. I'm planning to cut 74, and I find that this sill is 74 and a half. So that gives me some hope that my calculations were correct. But what I'm going to do is I'm planning this 74-inch sill. I think I'm going to make it 80 so that I can have a little bit of extra play, dry fit everything, and then cut the horns down to size after I've done that. So that's my plan. And then if you've done like me and pre-finished your wood, that means that the sill is actually finished on both sides, and that means I'm going to have to run this through my table saw. So what I do is I just take this craft paper on the back so that I don't scrape up the finish. If you're painting this, then you can just paint it after you've put the wood on. But I think if you're going to stain the wood, like I have been, it's a lot easier to stain the wood outside in your garage than it is to stain it inside after it's all put together, in my opinion. Yep, so that's the plan for these windows. I haven't done a window before, so I'm a little bit curious to see how badly this goes. Then the question becomes, how deep do we want to cut? So the horns are going to be whatever length they are, but then there's a depth that I have to cut in as well. And so if we measure this width of the frame, again, every window is going to be a little bit different. Mine are remarkably narrow. It's basically an inch. And remember, the apron's going to be here, so there's going to be a little bit of forgiveness. So let's go get those cut. Okay, so I have cut the sill, and we're just dry fitting it now. Just a quick tip, so again, your jam is almost certainly different. These are my jams. And then of course, we're going to have the trim with the 1/4 inch reveal. And so you can sort of dry fit all of this to measure your horns before you cut them. So mine's going to be 2 inches. And I've already made that cut. So let's get it all put together now. Okay, so I am going to nail this in place. You can see that my frame is really quite small. The old sills only stuck out like an inch. I've never lived in a house where I couldn't have plants on my windowsill, and so that always kind of made me crazy. So I'm sort of taking this as an opportunity to actually be able to have plants on my windowsills. Now I'm just going to make sure that it's level here before I shoot it in. And it looks like it needs to come up a bit on this side. And so use some of our handy shims to just raise up the one side. Okay, so the sill goes in first, and then the next thing are the window jams. Those get finished on 2 sides. Every window is going to be different. If you're looking to do this DIY, I suggest you watch a number of videos on this. Mine are outrageously small based on some of the videos I've seen. So we're going to start with the top piece. Just because it's kind of held in on 2 45-degree angles, and it's a 45-degree miter that I've cut. And then we'll do the sides. Which then it'll cover up any of the defects in the sill. That's one, and then I'll do the other, and we'll do the trim on the sides. Okay, so for the side trim, we want it to come up from the sill. Now that we have the jam in, and then we want sort of this 1/4 inch reveal. So for me, That seems to be exactly 5 feet. And measure both sides because it's probably not square, although it's pretty close. Okay, now I'm ready to put side trim on. And see, it looks like crap in behind, but you don't have to worry about that because the trim completely covers it. Yeah, and then for me, this center one, this is like 6 5/8 from jam to jam. So it means I need a piece that's like 6 inches or something weird like that. So I'm gonna have to rip that down from 8-inch board. And I don't have that made yet. Through the magic of editing, that shouldn't matter to you. Okay, so for the top, we're going to put this piece of 1/2 inch by 1.25 inch that we ripped and stained on 3 sides. And that's going to go a 1/4 inch past the trim on the sides here, which appears to be 72 1/8. So we'll rip this down, or we'll cut this down to 72. Well, let's try 72 3/4. Okay, so I've got this piece cut, and we can dry fit it just sort of by eye. We want a 1/4 inch overhang, which we've got. And remember, the end grains will be showing on this, and I'm just going to tack it in for the time being. If you want to, just like with the door, you could build this down on the ground. Install the thing in one piece if you wanted. Good. Okay, and then the top of the trim is going to be another 5.5 inch wide board. Only has to be stained on one side, and you want it to be the same width as the trim, which is again 72 1/8 for me. Alright, so put this up. We want it to be flush with the rest of the trim. You really only have to stain this one on the front side because the rest is going to be hidden. The end grain will be visible. Okay, and then now we've got this 2x2 stained on 3 sides that we're going to put with 1/2 inch overhang just to give it a bit of a built-up look. Okay, and just like on the doors, we want to take this just like on the doors, we want to take this 1/2 inch bead that we made ourselves and attach it underneath of this part here. And again, I'm using a 45-degree miter to do this. Okay, and then the apron, just like the piece that goes across the top, we want that to kind of be flush with the trim here, which the bottom here is actually 72 and a quarter for me. So we'll get that cut, and then that'll be the last piece. Okay, so then we've got the apron trimmed 2 sides. Okay, the last thing I did, just because I really made this sill quite a bit deeper than it used to be, so it's sticking out here almost 4.5 inches. And so what I did was I just took the 2x2 that I was using across the top, cut it so it's actually 1.5, and so I cut it into little 1.5 inch cubes and put those underneath. It sort of gives it a bit of a Craftsman look and a little extra support for how big the sill is. And I'm probably going to do a similar type of a pattern, but smaller, on the doors that I'm going to make. And so I think this will line up really nicely. And so it's a trick you could do if you're using this style of trim and you want the deeper sills. There's no reason to make it that deep. Like I said, my original sills, they really only stuck out from the window about 1 inch, which meant that they were really only a couple inches deep. So you couldn't put anything on them. But now I'm hoping I can put some plants on them and that it'll look really nice. So that's how I dealt with that. Okay, and then for the windows, the last step is to just seal up the edges with caulking. Sometimes you can find videos where people actually put caulk all around all the trim. I think that's usually for if you plan to paint it. You can go ahead and watch some videos about that. Since we've stained mine, I'm not going to do it everywhere, but I am going to do it around the window. So I have this brown caulk. I'm not really, this isn't a video about how to caulk properly, but I have this dripless caulk gun, cut it on an angle, and we're just going to try going around the window real quick. And then I've just got some more water here. I'm just going to smooth it out with our finger. Anyway, like I said, this isn't a how-to video on how to caulk. It's not something I'm particularly good at, but I think it's a good idea to do it around the windows. So I'm going to leave this in the video. I would definitely go to someone else's video about how to use caulk properly, because that is not my sport. So there you go. That's the window trim. This video is a little longer than the rest because I think I warned you at the beginning. The window trim's a little bit more involved. You can see that through the magic of editing. I indeed got this centerpiece cut, ripped down and put in place. Didn't film that, but you get the idea. I used to have curtains in here, but now I've put these cool blinds that can go up and down to really show off the trim. You can see that I indeed can have potted plants on the windowsill, which makes me incredibly happy. I think I forgot to say at the beginning that this is a design by James Wright, another YouTuber. His channel is called Wood by Wright, or Wood by Wright 2. And yeah, I guess let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you've tried it or if you have any questions. This is definitely more involved. I would suggest that you, if you can, start in a room or a hallway that doesn't have any windows. Get used to your saw, get used to the cuts, and then maybe do a room with a window second so that you've got some experience with this if you're going to try it, because I think the window is the hardest part of all of this for sure. Anyway, consider subscribing to the channel. It lets me know what people like and what they don't like. Leave a comment, leave a like, share this with someone, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.